Welcome everybody, hello and greetings to the Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition strategy guide for defense, how to be a better player for defense on Xbox. Now, quickly before we start, I want to mention that this guide is intended for brand new players to Age of Empires or Age of Empires 2 on Xbox. This isn't intended to be the definitive defense guide. I know that my knowledge isn't, at S tier levels with Age of Empires, but I've certainly played hundreds of hours of Age 2 and especially Age 4 that I think would be helpful to brand new players. With that, let's go ahead and get started. Now, there's different things that you can do in Age of Empires 2 to do with your defense, with your base, in terms of structures. Obviously, the best thing that you can do is add a wall. Now, in Age of Empires 2, there are two different types of walls. You have a palisade wall, which is a wood wall, and I'll build a example here with my villagers. And then the improved version is your stone wall or fortified wall, and you can actually improve your walls as you advance through the ages. So what I'm going to actually do is build a university. We'll build that over here. Now, you're going to get your palisade walls, your wooden walls, at the very beginning of the game. It's unlocked for you right at the Dark Age. As you advance through the ages, you will get access to your fortified walls. They obviously have more hit points and better defense. Now, there's different things that you can do for walling in Age of Empires 2. Interestingly enough, the way that the game works is you can actually block off complete sections of troop movement pathing without even using walls. In fact, you can use them with structures. And what a lot of people will do is use structures as sort of way to either funnel troops or make it a wall entirely. So let's say, for example, for the purposes of this, I'll build a house here, and a house here. These villagers will build it. I'll build one final house right here. I'm actually no longer to be able to path in between the gap of these two houses. If I did take these villagers and tell them to go chop that particular tree, you're going to actually see that they're going to attempt to path, and then they're going to walk all the way around all of these houses to get to that tree. If I were to say put another house right here, this is going to block off that path entirely, and I'm actually unsure what the villagers will do. I think they'll just not be able to go to this tree, period, and they might go to the next nearby tree for chopping. So you can do this as well to kind of, so they're not even going to do anything. They'll just instead chop the tree right next to the tree that I wanted them to gather from. So you can use this to your advantage to either funnel enemy troops or use this more or less as a wall as well. You can do this with any structure. You can do it with barracks, town center. Actually, not town centers. You can walk under those. Blacksmiths. I mean, really almost any structure will work for the purposes of walling. It's important to know that once you build a wall and you want your troops to go through, you're going to want to build a gate. For each particular wall, they have each type of gate. So if you're going to build a wooden wall, you're going to need a wooden gate. And you just want to build your wall, so, take your gate, put it on the part of the wall that you want it to be a gate, and then your villagers will construct the gate. Pretty straightforward. The only thing you should keep in mind, and this is unique to Age of Empires 2, this does not happen in Age of Empires 4, is when your gate is open, your villagers obviously will go through when they leave, and it will also open when they come back in. If that gate's open and an opponent is chasing you, if your gate is open, your opponent's troops will run right through. So just keep that in mind with your gates. Just because you have a gate does not mean that you can leave and your opponent's troops cannot follow. They certainly can in Age of Empires 2. If you're playing Age of Empires 4, that's just not possible. But nonetheless, that's unique to this game. Now, one thing you can also do, it's really up to you. I don't really recommend this, but you can put a stone or fortified gate on a wooden wall. I really would advise against this just because while this does give you more hit points, you can see a palisade gate has 400 hit points, while the fortified gate here, the fully upgraded one, has 4,000 hit points. The walls right next to it only have 250 for a palisade wall, whereas a fully upgraded fortified wall has 3,000 hit points. So given the opportunity, just use palisade gates if you're going to make palisade walls, and stone or fortified gates for your fortified walls.
Yay.
Next, let's talk about the differences between towers. There's different types of towers that you can build in Age of Empires 2, and you're going to either have outposts or guard towers. Now, you can actually upgrade your guard towers to become keeps as you advance through the ages in University. It's this upgrade here. However, the main differences between your outpost and your guard tower are quite significant. With your outpost, you can see it has 550 health, and what it essentially does is it gives you line of sight. For the purposes of this video, I've unlocked the ability to see everything just to make it a little bit easier for everyone to see what I'm building. However, your outpost will allow you to really increase your line of sight. Keeps, however, not only do they improve your line of sight, they have more hit points, all those sorts of things. They can also garrison units and fire arrows. So it's a huge improvement over outposts. I highly recommend, given the opportunity, if you have the resources and you want to have a more defensive area, you can certainly have guard towers. But let's just say you're in a situation where you just want to kind of increase the line of sight of, let's say, your base or your units to kind of get a lay of the land, or maybe see if an opponent's going to attack you. You don't really care about doing any damage. You just need the sight of their units. Then an outpost is going to be pretty great. Next, let's talk about unit garrisons in Age of Empires 2 and how you can use that to your advantage to defend yourself if you're getting raided or attacked and you don't want to lose a lot of your units. There's a few ways you can go about doing this. And by garrison, what you're going to do is take your units and temporarily store them in buildings that will allow them to be stored. Examples are your town center, and you can see here on the bottom left, that first row there, it tells you how many units can be garrisoned. That has 15. A castle here has 20. Outposts don't have any, and guard towers have 5. It really kind of depends on if you want to use your villagers or even military units that can garrison. And the benefit is that they will actually fire additional arrows as well. So it's a big, it's defensive and also a little offensive for your units in Age of Empires 2. There's a few ways you can do this. First is if you want to manually garrison some of your units, you select whatever units you want. You go to a particular structure that they can be garrisoned. You can see above the health bar or next to the health bar of this guard tower, it says X and then a little door icon. If you hold down X, if you just press X, your units will rush over and then they will garrison, and a little flag appears letting you know that units have garrisoned. Now, if you have your idle villager notification turned on, you'll be able to actually pivot to the villagers that are garrisoned in here. And next time when you select this guard tower, you're actually going to see the individual units that are garrisoned. Now, you can press X to ungarrison these units, but if you want them to go somewhere, let's say these villagers are done and I want them to say, oh, I don't know, mine, or start chopping that tree. As soon as I press X, they one at a time, they individually come out. I believe if you hold X, let's see, we can try that real quick. I believe just by holding X, you can make them all garrison all at one time. Let's try it here. Yeah, and they certainly do. So by holding X, they all immediately garrison. Individually pressing X, it sends one unit at a time. Another thing that you can do is ringing your town center bell. If you don't have the time to individually select villagers and then decide which structure that they should garrison in, you can ring your town center bell. To do this, you're going to select your town center, hold down the right trigger, and at top here it says ring the bell. And you're going to see your villagers will actually run to the closest garrisonable structure until that is full of garrison slots. So you saw a lot of villagers run here to this town center, and a couple of villagers ran to this just because it's closer. Let's say you have more than 15 villagers for this town center. They'll go to the next closest structure. So that would probably be this castle here. Once that fills up, they'll go probably to this guard tower, so on and so forth. So that's why sometimes it's helpful to build garrisonable structures, maybe overlooking some of your villagers, or maybe you make additional town centers to make them garrisonable if you are ever attacked. Now, let's say you want them all to return to the task that they were doing. You don't want to individually tell your villagers to go back to what they were doing. You simply just do the reverse. You select your town center, go up to the bell, ring the bell, and they all go back to exactly what they were doing when you rang the bell. All right, next let's talk about siege units, because what benefit would it tell you what the defenses are for structures in Age of Empires 2 without telling you kind of the counters to them if you want to go on the offense? Well, you have two different types of siege units, well, I guess two different ways you can build your siege units in Age of Empires 2. The first is through a siege workshop, which gives you a basic overview of the units that you can build. So you can build your mangonels. These are units that are designed to hit a large area. Let's say there's a lot of troops gathered in one spot. A mangonel is going to do fantastic. Battering ram is kind of self-explanatory. That takes down walls and structures pretty great. And then the next I'll cover are siege towers, and I'll show you the purposes of those in just a second. Finally, the last type of siege unit that I'll show here is in the castle. You have your trebuchet, and I'll show those here momentarily. The point of a trebuchet, which we often refer to as just simply trebs, is they have a long, wide range to attack something from afar. So while your battering rams can take down structures really, really close, they obviously have to be right on top of the wall or structure to do the damage. The treb can attack it from afar. So since my opponent here has gathered all of the relics, it's probably a perfect time to attack here and showcase the use of all this. You can have your mangonels target buildings if you would like. They are much more effective attacking individual units. You'll see the trebs here. Well, let's see if the treb will listen to me. There we go. It's now firing from afar onto this archery range. Sometimes the mangonels, they don't really, I would say, work the best against moving units or units that are moving very quickly. And it's also best with your unit composition. You want to keep most of your siege in the back. Of course, in the example of battering rams, they need to be up front. Let's go ahead and just target this town center, and we can kind of show their use. You kind of always want to be mindful of your siege, because since they do so much damage, you're actually probably going to aggro or get the attention of your opponents towards your siege, and they're very expensive units. You want to make sure that you're careful on your siege, and they are very susceptible, as you can kind of see here, to close range attack. Next, I'll finally show you the use of siege towers. Let's say you don't want to destroy someone's wall because they're going to, see the attention that you're making there, and instead you want to have a sneak attack. Well, that's where siege towers kind of come in play. The garrison, just like previously described, let's see if I can make it here. Oh dear. We'll have to make maybe some sort of fake attack. We'll send these units this way. See if I can just kind of sneak on by. Here we go. And then you go right up to a wall, press the A button, and as long as the siege tower makes it, looks like it will, we will just hop right over the wall, and we're going to be in their base. And there we go. So it's just deposited my 10 units that I've built here. This dude really built up. Somehow this is the easiest difficulty. This guy went immediately for a relic win condition. There you go. So if you want to kind of attack someone by doing a sneak attack, you can certainly do that here as well. As a reminder, in Age of Empires 2, you can attack walls with any type of unit, and not just specifically siege units. However, with palisade walls, they're more susceptible to, say, for example, swords and bows and arrows, whereas stone walls here can take quite a lot of hits. And as you're seeing here, you want to be mindful of what you're actually using with your units, because friendly fire actually is enabled in Age of Empires 2. You saw there for quite a bit in my battering ram right now, all of my units dying to my own mangonel volleys. So if you're going to make a lot of mangonels and you're having a, sword-to-sword engagement with your opponent, just be mindful. You might actually be doing some friendly fire, and that does work against your teammates as well. So just be mindful of that. But again, this was a basic general overview of how defenses work in Age of Empires 2. Let me just get these guys out of the way. It looks like they're all dead. I'm trying to make sure I don't lose here. Okay, so now I think we have a shot into their base. Let's go and see if we can kind of stop losing to the easiest AI. I hope that this tutorial was helpful for you. Remember, you have access to palisade walls and gates in the beginning. Use that to your advantage if you think that that's important. I've also attempted, and unsuccessfully, you can do layers of walls if you want. The game really will allow you to stack up walls right on top of walls, and you can also tie into, say, your teammates' walls as well. So let's say if you want to make a stone wall and then maybe have a barrier of a palisade wall, something like that, you can certainly do that to your heart's content. I would just say it's not as effective as it would seem. I think you get diminishing returns building multi-layers of walls. But, you know, I've seen stranger things in Age of Empires, so the more you know. If you want to find other videos that I've made regarding Age of Empires 2 on Xbox, I have an Age of Empires 2 guide playlist. I hope you check that out. And if you want to see us play online, well, there's certainly a playlist for that as well. Age of Empires 2 multiplayer contains all the videos we've made in PvP and ranked in Age of Empires. Well, I hope that you found this video helpful for you, and I hope that you're also enjoying Age of Empires 2 if you're a new player to the game or the series. And I hope to see you online someday. That's going to do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, everybody, and I'll see you, James.